Morning, guys. Basically, coming off the bye week, a lot of things going on in the bye week. Every year, I think that it's the time to sort of reset yourself a little bit. Certainly, we need to do that to some degree. But trying to get back health-wise a little bit, also trying to get out recruiting and do some different things in that area. And I think that we got some players back for this week, so we'll see how that all shakes out. Also try to stay in condition to make sure that because we are basically taking 2 weeks, you don't have a game last weekend, you lose a little bit of a conditioning factor. So we worked last Thursday and Friday quite extensively, I would say, in both areas. So Penn State rivalry, traditionally I think when Coach Perlis was here, Penn State came into the league, and we started playing them the last game of the season in 1993, I believe. And it's taken on a little bit of a different twist because we're playing in mid-season now, but I believe we played them up through 2016 on the last game of the season. It was sort of a built-in rivalry. So there's been some great games in the past as we've gone through this, and you know, it's sort of a game that we've pointed to. Have not had a home game since September 28th, so a little bit different type of scheduling. Sort of in a different phase here because we have one game basically in 3 weeks' time, with a bye coming next week as well. You know, 2 games, you know, Penn State, Illinois, in 1 month, 4 weeks. So a little bit different in terms of what we're dealing with, but we knew this was going to happen, so we need to prepare ourselves accordingly. And I think that you know, we've embraced the situation, opportunity to get guys back and focus in on a little bit more as we go forward. Penn State itself is another top 10 team. I believe it's the 3rd time we're playing, maybe I guess ever in the history of Michigan State football is what I understand, that we played 3 top 10 teams in a row. I believe we're the only team in the country to have done that, so obviously it'd be another great challenge for us. When you look at Penn State, I think Coach Franklin's done a great job there thus far. You look at them offensively, Sean Clifford, their quarterback's playing at a high level. Offensive line, I believe 3 guys are back. Tight end is number 87 is a guy, and certainly KJ Hamler, number 1, is a guy that you stop Penn State, you've got to first and foremost begin to stop him. And he's an outstanding player, makes things happen. Also on special teams, he's making things happen as well as a kick returner, punt returner. When you look at them defensively, again, you see some top 10 type components of their defense. Sacks, 2 defensive ends, Gross Matos and Shakatoni, 2 guys that give them speed off the edge. Linebackers, Parsons and Brown, very, very active guys. 3 guys coming back in the secondary, so there'll be a challenge on that side of the ball as well. But we played well. With all that being said, we played well against them, and we played and found a way to win the last 2 years. So should be an exciting game to watch. Opportunity to step forward and reset, as I said, and I'll take some questions. Thanks.
Mark, this double bye situation, you know, bye game, bye. You talked about it this summer. How have you, I guess, tried to mentally get the guys, especially coming off the game a couple of Saturdays ago?
Yeah. Well, again, we knew the schedule coming in, and I think this is one of the first years, I don't think we've ever had a bye, 2 byes, and this is nationwide. I don't think the football season has ever had 2 byes in it in my coaching career. So we knew that was coming. We also, as I said before here, we've sort of broken our season up in phases, and first phase went through the Arizona State game, and then we had Northwestern. We had the last 3 of the 4 games on the road, and then we come to this segment, which we said, okay, we got 1 game in 3 weeks. So we need to focus in on this particular game and make sure that we're prepared mentally, physically, and emotionally, ready for Penn State. And then we go and have to do the same thing with the Illinois situation, because we're 2 weeks away from that football game as well. So it is a little bit different, but I've always just tried to embrace the situation that we're in and step forward. And you know, we've got to plant our foot in the ground. Coming off the Wisconsin game, got to plant our foot in the ground and drive forward. And I think that's what you have to do. You know, it was disappointing how we played up there, the outcome, and everything that was going on with that. So we got to figure it out and reset and move forward. And I think we're capable of that. We get some players back, and so it should be step forward in that direction.
Mark, over here, KJ Hamler was a guy I know you guys targeted in recruiting. Is this the sort of game breaker sort of guy you suspected from him? And do you feel like your offense right now is kind of missing that aspect, a guy who can go the distance like that and really turn a game around?
Well, yeah, KJ's a guy that is coming off a knee injury his senior year. We offered him, recruited him hard and all that. He was at Orchard Lake, they went to IMG. Really like KJ as a person as well. But he's been a dynamic player for them, especially the last couple of years. I think us losing Jalen Naylor for a time period is a guy like that, But KJ's been extremely productive. We look for that type of production from our guys as well. So I guess the answer to your question, we're getting some plays out of some of our guys, Daryl Stewart and different things. But KJ's a guy that's been electrifying thus far, and has been a guy that can go the distance. So we've got to play.
Mark, with the, obviously you said a disappointing performance at Wisconsin, what was the sense you got from your guys over the bye week as far as what you were working on to move forward after back-to-back losses where you obviously weren't where you wanted to be?
Well, young people are resilient. That's the first and foremost that you see in them. They came back and, again, we're working on health, we're working on strength, we're working on a lot of different components, practicing, refocusing, those type of things. But young people have always been resilient. They believe very strongly in themselves. I didn't sense any kind of, certainly there's disappointment, but people get up off the ground quick around here, and that's what you have to do if you're going to succeed in the next step. Then you better get your mind right and get back up. And that's been the message from day one around here since we've walked in, and I think that's the message in every program across the country. Now, can you do it or not is the next question. But you've got to first and foremost have that mentality that you've got to step forward. And so that's what we've tried to do here. We've maintained a positive approach, and trying to fix the things that we can fix and change the things we cannot.
You've had a lot of success against Penn State, and in some ways it's sort of the opposite of what Northwestern maybe for a time had against you guys. Is there anything to a matchup, a program, as you play a team over time, year after year, when things start to work, or any similarities you've seen in any of those games?
Well, they've all been, I think pretty much they've all been relatively close. I think 15 and 16 probably were not, even though in both of those games, the game was relatively close at halftime or after, even in 15, and then things happened with turnovers or whatever the case, and those games got out of hand a little bit, but prior to that, they've been close games. I don't know, I think they enjoy coming and playing in our atmosphere, and we enjoy going and playing in theirs, quite frankly, and I think our guys got up for it, and we just try and take a positive approach, as I said earlier, and we played well against them, so our confidence should be there. You've got to make plays on the field, and you've got to have a plan that works and all that kind of stuff, so it's all comprehensive, but I don't know if I can answer that question other than we've won the last two, and I think we're 4-1 in the last 5 games, so we need to build on that and try and be 5-1.
Mark, you mentioned getting a bunch of players back, and when Kevin Jarvis went down about a month or so ago, you used this game as a possible returning point for him. I'm just curious where he may be in his recovery process.
Which guy?
Kevin Jarvis.
I'm not going to talk about guys who aren't really on the depth chart in that respect. He's not on the depth chart yet. I don't think he is.
Given the losses that you guys have sustained in the 2016 class, you talked about recruiting. How much does that influence how you approach recruiting this cycle? And also, how hard is that to just have those kind of losses when you have the recruiting restrictions and limitations towards assigning class 25 guys?
We've always been under the limit in 25 guys, so we've always recruited, 18, 20, 22, that kind of stuff. We've really never gone over that number. It's disappointing. The 16 class is disappointing that we lost guys, and that, but there's reasons and individual reasons for all those things happening. And the only thing that I can say is, you need to push forward. As far as how we recruit, we're trying to recruit as best we can in every respect.
Mark, over here. What was your reaction when you saw the Illinois-Wisconsin result? Did you see any of the game?
Yeah, I watched the whole game. I would say emotion plays a big part in every football game, and you can see the emotion, and you can see a game start to change a little bit, and people start to have a little bit more belief. And they were 30.5-point underdogs, and it gave you the notion that anybody can rise up at any point in time. And if you take small steps, those small victories become big victories at the end of it. I was very impressed with what they were able to do, and take it from there.
Mark, excuse me. I believe it's 6 players now that are in the transfer portal since the start of the season. Do you, internally, is that number, I guess, concerning to you, or do you just kind of see this as the new norm? And on top of that, specifically with Cam Chambers, he made a comment on social media about whether or not his law school aspirations and stuff sort of got in the way of football and everything. I guess, is there anything you could say to whether that part of his studies affected why we didn't see him as much on the field?
First of all, I'm going to take the high road in terms of the transfer portal. There's a lot of young men in the transfer portal right now, and you can break it up by schools, you can break it up by position, you can break it up by year, and it all sort of sorts itself out. It goes in a lot of different directions. But I think it's the new norm. Sad to say, I think it's the new norm that we'll see in college football. I think it's a little bit, there's a different reason for everybody making these decisions. But I think in the end, it's about opportunity to play in a lot of ways. It's about patience at times, for younger players, or for older players. It's about, trying to move forward with their careers. I've had individual talks with every person that decided to go in there, and try to put the other side of the story there. So my take on it all is always going to be take the high road, wish the best for those individuals as they move forward in their football careers, and then try and make ourselves better. To be quite honest with you, when the scholarship opens up, you try and make yourself better. You try and improve your quality of play. And some guys have played for us and are looking for bigger roles. Some guys, quite frankly, haven't played for us. They're looking for opportunity to play elsewhere. And that's the way it's gone. That's probably the way it goes for everybody in America right now. So it's one of those things that I think is probably here to stay, and you have to deal with it as a head football coach and as a staff. You really have to look at recruiting and say, okay, you have a guy that's responsible for the portal. I think that, today when I looked at it, there were 344 names in there. So that's a lot of people. Now, where are all those people going to go? I'm not quite sure, as I said earlier. Do the best I can and take the high road in this capacity. And I appreciate what those guys did for us when they were Spartans.
Speaking of the Dutch, I know Michael Fletcher was injured earlier in the year, but I was his name and for a course in a couple of places. Is this a sign that it's just as freshmen developing and you're getting toward that point in the season where you can use them, or like they're ready, or should we expect to see more guys like that?
Well, Michael Fletcher's been out. He had a foot injury, so he's back in pads now. He was back last week as well. He was a guy that looked exciting initially in camp. So he's back now. How much he'll play will depend on how well he practices this week and that type of thing, depth issues and things of that nature. But I think he will be active on the sidelines and he'll travel. Parks Kissinger was moved to tight end. He's been doing a good job. And then also Adam Burke, of course, is a tight end in high school. He's a big 6'7", 262-pound guy. So he's working at that position as well and shows great promise. And he's a redshirt freshman, but I'm still saying he's a dual guy. He's played defensive end. And he's a dual guy, so he'll get opportunities to look at both ends of the spectrum, but we'll list him in both areas right now.
But Mark, with the earlier talk about the transfers maybe being the new norm, there's a lot in there, but you guys did have quite a few in a short span of time, coupled with 2 pretty tough losses. I wonder if you took any time or felt the need to during the bye to maybe talk to the team to stabilize this or make sure that it doesn't get carried away.
No, I don't talk about it. I keep marching forward. That's what we do.
Mark, I assume that when you have a lot about good wins or important wins, you hear from a lot of former players. I'm curious if the opposite is true. Like the last few weeks, have you heard from guys, and maybe if so, what some of those messages have been?
Yeah, you hear from people who just hang in there, keep pushing. You hear from a lot of different people, whether they're former players or whether they're people within our program or donors or past coaches or things of that nature. So, one thing about coaching, everybody, or football is everybody's, you want to look for problems, you find problems. Everybody's experiencing some pain out there in college football or pro football, quite honestly, or high school football. And other people are experiencing some success as well. So you get both ends of the spectrum, but when I see our players are supportive, and I appreciate that.
AJ Arcuri is back on the depth chart this week. Would that indicate he's all the way ready to go, or just a sort of a possibility? And Jalen Naylor is not, but I'm just curious, I guess, if the timeline still sort of holds up from when you initially said
Yeah, we're looking for Jalen's return this season yet, and I think he will make it. We'll see where he's at because he could be redshirted. If we tend to play him in 3 more games rather than more. And then AJ is practicing actively, and so it's good to go. So we'll see.
We talk about in the bye week, you're able to reset and kind of get a fresh start. Is that more just kind of the attitude and the approach for the guys? Because can you really change much that you do schematically at this point in the season, or are there minor tweaks you can do even with a week off, or is it still just more that kind of?
Well, I think there's always minor tweaks offensively, defensively, that you look at, and you're going back and trying to look at the different things. You have an opportunity to look at a lot of film and a lot of different things, that what has worked, what hasn't worked, what can you do that has worked from what other people do, those type of things. So you're really looking across a broad spectrum of things to try and get yourself ready for the next contest. I do think that regardless of where you're at in your season, when you have a bye week, you sort of reset, and then you go forward, whether that's after some success or after some period of disappointment. You've got to try and just sort of restart a little bit, because it is different when you don't play a game on a weekend. It is different, just in terms of the practice structure and how you're going to handle it. You don't want to get anybody hurt, so we got out of Thursday and Friday with nobody getting injured, which was a big positive. So you don't want to press it too hard, but you have to do some contact work to some degree.
Mark, you guys had an outstanding defense last year. These guys want to show they were one of the best in the nation this year. In 3 straight games, giving up more than 30 points, which hasn't happened in a while around here. What's the sense you get from those guys with being, such a veteran-led group with, experience that you had coming back from last year?
Every game's been a little bit different, I think, as you've gone through it. Those 3 games, we saw some big plays in those games, which led to a lot of the yardage. I thought we played very well in the first quarter of Ohio State. The second quarter, not so well. Third quarter, pretty well, those type of things. Wisconsin, sort of, different type offense, and I don't think we adjusted very well to this style of play, run the belly play and things of that nature. They hit the jet sweep on us, twice for big yardage in that game. So we look at different things in that respect. Indiana, quarterback moved and extended plays and created some different things, much like the Ohio State game, created some different things. So just got to tie it up. Right now, when you look at it in 7 games, we've had 12 runs over 15 yards. So we're still playing pretty well against the run. And then when you look at the pass plays that have gone over 20, there are things that we can control. And that's what you have to look at. Can you control the outcome of the situation? I think that we can control those things. But we've got to play well. We've got to limit explosive. You say, how are you going to beat Penn State? Limit the explosive plays, have to protect our quarterback, cannot turn the ball over and have to get some takeaways. It's all basically broken down into certain aspects. Every football game is like that. So got to be able to run the ball and be productive. You've got to come up with some production. So there's all these different factors that enter into it. You've got to win some of those factors.
Just just a little bit curious as to what you think James Franklin has done this year to have the Nittany Lions playing at such a high level.
You know, when I look at their football team right now, they've closed out 3 games. They closed out the Pitt game. They closed out, but with Pitt still being able to have a possibility at the end, but the Iowa game, they closed it out with first downs at the end of the game. When things started to get tight, they closed it out. Same thing in the Michigan game. When things started to get tight, they closed it out. They were able to get that first down, run out the clock, or get that score to break a 21-21, you know, to go from 28 to, you know, from 21 to 14 to 28 to 14. But in their tight games, they've made plays. I look at that, and 2 guys that made them. You know, Hamler makes 2 of the plays in the last game, but you know, they sort of tail back by committee a little bit. With Kane being a guy that probably is a guy number 21, that maybe he's the guy they want to focus on, maybe not. You know, I see all the guys have some big runs in there when you look at all the different film, but I think that's what they've done. And you know, when you win and you start winning close games, you know, you start to have a belief in that. We've made a living on those type of situations around here in the past, close games we've won. So not just in the Penn State rivalry, but or contest, but I think across the board we've been able to do that at times when we've had our great seasons.
You've talked about the transfer portal, but how much do you think the redshirt rule has been disruptive, and do you think it's gone a different direction than maybe the Coaches Association that advocated for it, intended for it to go?
Yeah, that's probably a good question. I think the redshirt rule is a good rule for 4 games. How it goes in terms of how it can disrupt the football season might be another way to look at it, but there's always going to be a positive for every negative, or a negative for every positive. So again, I'm just going to try and take the high road with everything and say, okay, this is a decision that young people make, and got to get a deal with it and move forward. Look at it as an injury.
Mark, in the second half of that Michigan-Penn State game, the Wolverines seemed to have wore down that Penn State defense a little bit. They were moving the ball pretty well. Can you look at that and maybe take some of the things that the Wolverines did and try to emulate that this Saturday?
Yeah, absolutely. You look at everything that anybody does and how they've had success, and you try and emulate that, as you said. I thought they did a great job. I thought U of M did a great job getting back in the game and continuing to push through. And I think there's a message there. You know, down 21-0, they fought back. I think that's a team trait, and they got back in the game. And if anything, that tide sort of turned a little bit in the second half as they came back. And then again, as I said earlier, you have to credit Penn State for closing it out at the end. They found a way as well. It's a great football game to watch.
Mark, 2 things on the offense. You mentioned, especially after the Wisconsin game, you weren't able to generate much in the run game. How do you fix that with young running backs, and does the depth coming back on the line help? And secondly, with the receivers dropping passes, how do you correct that in the season as well?
Well, you got to have confidence and just not drop them. Sometimes it's going to happen. Sometimes the pass breakup or maybe a little high or whatever, but you got to make some catches. We've had some drops, but we've also had some great catches. So again, I know everybody hates to hear me say it, but I want to just stay positive with our guys and believe in them. And I think that's the best thing that I can do. As far as the run game, yeah, getting some guys back on the offensive line, but you got to move people. You know, you got to get your feet across the line of scrimmage. Our offensive line's feet got to get across the line of scrimmage. If you've got to double to the second level, in other words, double the down guys to the second level, you got to get movement on the down guy first. You have to be able to block movement. And it's interesting, you know, I talk to my daughters, you know, all the time, and my oldest daughter said, you know, Dad, I don't think people sometimes understand that on every defense, there's a play too. There's somebody calling a defensive play. So there's different coverages, different stunts, different movements, different fronts, different inline movements, and all these different things. I said pretty perceptive, Chrissy. But all these different type of movements, I think, you know, are something you have to consider as well and deal with. So there's different blocking schemes, there's different things, there's different courses that the running back has to take. There's all these different things, and so it's not just the offensive side of the ball, it's the defensive side of the ball too. there's a reason that Penn State's ranked in the top 10. One of the reasons is they're playing top 10 defense. So you have to deal with that aspect of this game as well.
Mark, along those lines, wondering if you watched the film on Brian Lewerke from last week, what you saw in that performance, and is he seeing the field okay? Is his confidence all right, sort of where he is during the season?
Yeah, he's got to be. You know, I don't think that anybody played as well as they had. I thought from an offense perspective, we took a step backwards in that football game prior to the Ohio State game when we crossed the 57 times, I believe, and had some different things going that sort of stalled out for whatever reason because of a drop pass or whatever before the half. But I don't think he played as well as he had previously, but maybe none of us did, coaching as well. So again, I have high expectations. We have high expectations, and this is a guy who I think 2 years ago threw for over 400 yards against Penn State. So he's fully capable, and we'll look for him to play a great football game. And I think as our quarterback goes, so goes your offense. The same thing can be said whether you look at any football team, I think, out there. You know, as your offense goes, your quarterback's moving with you. I think that's just part of football. That's good. Thank you very much.